Was I not recording? I was
No.
not recording. That's not good.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought I pushed recording. I must have pushed stop recording. How terrible is that? So I'll do one quick thing. I'm going to go back to the Mybib piece just quickly because I want that to be on the recording for you guys. Okay, so this is the mybib.com site. We just talked about that. I just want this to be on the recording so you guys can find it. It's pretty easy to work with. And so you just name your project. If you have a new project, you click on that one. You put a name in it. I could have another new project. I have a bunch of new projects. Here's another one. I find an article I'm interested in. I'll copy the link up here. I copy the link. And then I'm going to create a citation. I'm going to put the link in there. This one's a website. And again, if you're not sure, if there's other stuff, you click on more, and it's going to give you ideas. In this case, it is the website, so we would put it in, and whoops. And it's going to tell us what we have and what we don't have. Okay, I'm trying to do this too fast. And so we have our URL in there. We click search. It tells us something we should look at, which is the credibility of this article is maybe low, proceed with caution. So, but we want it, so we go ahead and click on it. We go there, it says it can't find the web page author. Well, so we've already done this once, but we'll look at it and say, yeah, it actually does. And so we go back there to the web page, and we find out, if we roll down a little bit, that we have the author. So we're just going to copy it. We'll go back there. And then take the first name out. Okay, so we've got the full name. And then it says it doesn't have data published. We say yes, it does. And we go back there and we find out that it's March 31st of this year. So we go 2020, March 31st. We go next. And it says, okay, this is what I've got, which is pretty good. Data access, yes, we want today's date today. Since it hadn't put it in there, I went ahead and clicked on it, so it would put it in there. We still don't have a publisher for this, but it turns out that it's probably published by this EU Observer, probably publishes itself. So here we have a preview of what our citation looks like. So it's last name, first name, opinion. Here's your article title. Here's your publication, the date, the URL, access date. We're going to save it. And there's our citation. So we have it. And then one thing we pointed out last time was that if you have, if you're taking something, a quote or a paraphrase from here, your in-text citation is right there. So we know we take the first thing out of the citation. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it beside our quote, or we're going to put it beside our paraphrase. And then the first project that I worked on has more than one. So if I wanted to have a Works Cited page, I just click on the download Works Cited, click on that. I'm going to copy and paste it in my paper, so I click on that. And I have this very nice works cited that I can copy and put in my paper. Okay. So now I think that was recorded. Thanks for that, you guys. So yeah, you can watch this. You can watch this again. That'll be good. And you had asked earlier about the format. So we're going to look at the format, remind you of what you're going to be doing. If you were looking at your assignments, let's do that first. If you were looking at the assignments, you would see that your first assignment for this argument paper is here at the bottom. So it says it's the second paper, so it's online too. And by the way, it's just a partial of your rough draft. It's just going to be the introduction and your 2 summary paragraphs. You're going to upload your file, and you're going to, by the way, have a thesis sentence in there because you have to take a position on this. And the positions you can take, we were talking about, you can either say it's a first step, it's a necessary step, it's the most effective step that we should take, so we should go that way, or maybe we should do both at the same time. And you're kind of thinking of 3 things. We're thinking of cost, results, or the amount of time it takes to get something done. We want to look at all those things. Another thing you could actually look at is how wide is the impact. So if we were looking at education, that would be everyone. If we were looking at something like biofuels, the impact of that would be for us, of course, but the main impact would be on airlines and on how fast we travel. So if we didn't travel a lot, wouldn't be a lot of impact on us, but it would help for the environment. Perhaps not as much as educating everybody so that we all got on board. And then besides trying to, because once you know about it, then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to buy that product because those people are still trying to mess up my air or they're polluting my water. I'm not going to buy that product. I'm going to buy this other one. So we have a lot of influence over what business produces and how things are made. So we would think about, well, which way do we think has a maybe bigger impact like that? So with this one, you're going to put this on by 5.5, this introduction and 2 summary paragraphs. People are going to be giving you comments back, and I'm going to give you comments back. And then you're going to continue to work on the other 3 paragraphs that you need to do. You're going to be posting that on 5.12.
Mr. Osman?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. On the other file that you uploaded, I think it was the one that says the directions. You said that the complete rough draft was going to be due on the 28th of April, so we disregard that?
Well, this is looking at, well, okay, so what I was going to do is set up kind of a rough draft. I'm going to set up sort of an area where you guys can keep posting things that you're working on. But in terms of the first 3 paragraphs, I do want those by 5.5. So from what I can tell and where people are right now, I really doubt anybody would have a complete rough draft by 4/28. I don't see it happening. So no, I've set up with some standard dates that I know will work. If you can get it on before 5.5, that's excellent. So as soon as you get it on, I'll be working on it. But 5.5, you know, 5.5 is the end date. It's not that oh, I have to wait until 5.5 to put it on. No, you're gonna put it on when you can, and then everybody needs to get it done by 5.5. These are the last dates possible.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the complete draft on 5.12, that's going to be the last date possible, because I have to look at it and give you feedback. And the reason I put the 5.5 is because while you're writing the other 3 paragraphs, the support paragraphs, I can be marking the first 2, you can be writing the other 3, and then when you get the the first two back, or first three back, that's two summaries and the introduction, you know, you can fix what you need on those. Then when you post on 512, the first three paragraphs should be very good, and then the last three paragraphs, and your, which will be your body paragraphs, and then your counter narrative, sort of counter argument, and conclusion will be the last pieces. So you're going to be constantly working on it, but I want to be giving you feedback while you're doing that. So I'm sort of breaking it into the first piece of it, which is the introduction, the summary paragraphs. If that is set up correctly, the others are just research work. I mean, it's not any novel thinking or anything. And then the conclusion, of course, you have to come back to your introduction and decide, well, what do you think? Do we have to do both? Should we just do one? Should we do this in stages? If one is going to be very expensive, do we think it's even possible to do? Carbon sinks, for instance, and a carbon sink is sort of a mechanism that would absorb the carbon. It would pull the greenhouse gases from the air. We would be pretty desperate to have to do that, but it doesn't mean we wouldn't. And the carbon sink would be very expensive to suck all this air through it, pulling the carbon dioxide, and then we'd have to store it. So the whole process would be extremely expensive, and we'd probably only do it if we were desperate, and if we had the money, because it's going to take money. So scientists are working on it, and they've developed some some models of it, but they're not in production, and they're not anything that will work to pull huge amounts, which we would have to do. So yeah, but this is the first one, and then on 512, these are the last states. You can kind of get them in and can look at it. Let's see. So we wanted to look at the format. I think it'll be here. So let's see if we can find our format. That's not it. There it is. So this is the main folder, then there's two subfolders. It's the second subfolder of the three. So if we click on this one, that takes us to the argument format. And the argument itself, the paper-wise, it's going to be, I think it's 7 paragraphs altogether. So we have an introduction, and in the introduction, you have to have a hook, make it interesting. So, and then background, how serious is this issue? What's going on with global warming or climate change that we need to be worried about it? How fast is it going to happen? Whatever background you think we would need to understand that there really are consequences to what's going on. Your hook can be a stat, a quote, an anecdote, anything you find interesting. And then you want a short 1-sentence summary of each of the two works. You're really just introducing them here. So you're introducing them because from there, you're going to go to your thesis, which is your argument. And you're going to be arguing that either one of these two is better, they're both better. And when you make your introduction, you're sort of guessing with your thesis at this point because you really haven't done the research yet. So it's highly possible when you, toward the end of your paper, you might change your thesis because maybe first time you said, well, we need to do both. And then you found out that one was really expensive, or one would take 20 years to do, or one is really something that we're not very sure about. So then you would probably say we should spend our effort and money on whichever one you feel is most practical. So this makes, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So can we use the word I?
No, we can't use the word I. Why would you want to use the word I?
Because we're gonna, isn't it our own belief, like what we think would help?
No. You know what you're doing? You are the person that's going to find the research for us, and you're going to be the expert.
Okay.
You don't say I think, because all of us, I mean, we're nice people, right? But we're not experts.
Mm-hmm.
So really, right? So what you do is you say it like it's objective. So you say the evidence indicates. You don't say I believe. You say the evidence indicates, or very objective voice, not a personal voice.
Okay.
Personal
Thank you.
voice, people want to know who you are. So okay, so who is this person? And what's their? They're not a doctor. They're not a scientist. Who is this person? And really, we're just, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. It doesn't mean that the information that you're going to present in here isn't valid. It's highly valid. But you also have to, um, create a persona where people believe that you're a credible person. They're not listening to your personal voice. Like, okay, it's this person's opinion. I don't know really what I think about that. You just want to represent what you found, the information you found. So this one's called a transactional piece. Most of academic writing is transactional. It doesn't have first person in it because it's not about your opinion. It's about the information that you found that you're trying to share with these other people. So um, even with the thesis sentence, you're going to argue, and your argument is simply that, and you could say it this way: the evidence indicates that this is a better, um, you know, method of reduction of climate change, or something like that. And in that way, you're not saying, I believe, or anything like that. It's not important whether you believe it or not. If the evidence indicates it, then that's what you would say, or that kind of thing. So that's just an example of how to do it. That was a good question, by the way. Yeah, glad you asked.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then summary paragraphs. So you're going to need two of those because you're going to have two, what I'm calling anchor text. So if we were at San Diego State, when you have two main articles you're working with, they call them the anchor text. They anchor all of your research because everything applies to them. So you take these two anchor texts that you're working on, and you have to do a summary of each one because you have to explain, what's it about. So in that way, you have to write a paragraph for each one. You want to summarize each anchor text. What are their claims? What are their key ideas? What are their evidence? So those are pretty big paragraphs, but really it's the research. You're just showing us what's in there. Make sure when you do your topic sentence, you identify the author, capitalize it, and the title is going to be in quotes, and then the date will be in parentheses. And state the claim. What is the claim that this person is making about, mitigating climate change? Then you're just going to provide your information, your background, evidence. You're going to have certain evidence, and then you want to explain what it's talking about, and have a concluding sentence. So this is really just a summary where you're showing what they presented in their paper. So you've got two of those. So this is what's due on the 5th. The first introduction paragraph and these two summary paragraphs. Once you have that set up, then I know whatever research you guys do will be valid. I mean, it'll work out. So those are the first three paragraphs. The next three paragraphs, you can have 4 if you want. I've seen people make 4, but I think 3 is good. You bring in some articles. You can have more articles for one than you have for the other one, because if you feel like, if we were doing jet biofuel, I mean, there's not a lot to find out about that. If you were doing education, there's quite a bit on that. If you were doing super plants, there's quite a bit of evidence on that. You don't want to bring it in. There's some things that take more evidence to sort of prove what's going on with them. If you wanted to look at the rainforest, there's on that. If you wanted to look at changing our lifestyle, so if we could stop eating red meat, you would find that had a huge impact. It doesn't sound like it does, but it has a huge impact on the environment. One small thing, for instance, is cattle. When they do like a little burp, they're burping up methane. And methane, I know it sounds weird, but we have thousands and thousands of cattle, probably millions of cattle in the world. And those little burps, which sound like nothing, produce a lot of methane. And And then some businesses produce a lot of methane. So sometimes what seems to be nothing, very little stuff, it's so impactful on our um, atmosphere or our environment that, you know, just small amounts can be a problem because we never had big releases of methane before. It's only since humans got on the earth and started growing cattle and, you know, making their industries that we had this problem. So when people argue that, oh, it's a natural cycle, no, this was never the natural cycle. There weren't this many people. The natural cycle is when there were just a few of us and mostly animals and plants. That was the natural cycle. Now we've got something else going on, and that's our problem. So you go through this and you introduce, say, take something out of one of the articles that you find is interesting, a fact, a detail, something you want to talk about, maybe even their claim, and then bring in some evidence, research from other articles that support it or don't support it, supporting evidence. These would be reasons, examples, facts, whatever you can bring in. Make sure, and I'm putting this here so you remember, you've got to have to put an in-text citation beside any research that you use. Whether it's a paraphrase, or you're putting it in your own words, or if it's a quote, because it's not yours, you borrowed it. And then how does this evidence prove the point that you're trying to make about this, I don't know, does it support it in some way, so this seems to be better? Does it also prove that it's maybe not as impactful as the other one? What? So you do that. You do 3 of these paragraphs. And they'll be fairly big, I'm not really sure, but pretty good size because of the research. And then you've got to have a counter paragraph, a counter argument paragraph. So this would be your 7th paragraph. Because 2 things. I think the easiest way to do the counter argument is we're not going to entertain the idea that global warming is not happening, because it is. It's too obvious. But what we would entertain is this idea that maybe the ideas we chose, there are other ideas that are better. So you want to consider that other people may have found, and all you have to do is look at the peer topics. You know, maybe they found out that creating green spaces in cities was actually highly effective in terms of our lifestyle. Parks, more parks, protecting trees in some way. Maybe that turns out to be very effective and it's something that we should be doing. That could be done at the same time, or that has a greater impact. So you want to consider that. And in that way you're representing what the other side says. So you're arguing that your way is better. They're arguing that their way is better. So you want to represent some of the other ways, and then evaluate that a little bit. So that would be what you call a concession. You're conceding that the other person may have a really good idea, but then you want to come back to your own idea, and if it's possible, if it's still true, you want to refute them and say, yes, that's all true, and we probably should be doing that. Maybe that's should be part of a total plan, but certainly we should do this other thing first because of whatever you have to say. And then your final piece is just your conclusion, which is kind of 2 halves if you want to think about it. The first half of that paragraph is going to be where you kind of explain or conclude, go back to what your main argument was and maybe your strongest evidence was, and then restate your claim. Now, restating your claim is not to take the same sentence and the same piece of information you had the intro and just copy and paste. It's to put it in new words, put it in words that take on the complexity of everything you've introduced. So maybe add something in there that you've introduced in your body paragraphs. The second half of that paragraph is we want to have some sort of thinking that you've thought through the issue critically. So you might want to do a projection about if we would do this thing, what would happen, how much better would it be? If we don't do this thing, what would happen, what would go on? And you want to come back to the idea that it's very important. So you want to emphasize, it's called emphatic, that you need to do this thing right away. It needs to be done now. If you do that, then your argument takes on an importance and people feel oh, maybe I better do it. Format-wise, if you're looking at kind of how to construct it, the topic sentence in that conclusion paragraph, presenting your arguments and your most important evidence. And then, as it says, first, your conclusion should not simply restate. If it says the same thing, then there's no critical thinking. Even anybody reading it is just going to be, well, you already said that, so what is it you want to say exactly? And then secondly, tell us why we should care, not so much about your paper, but about the topic and about your claim. Why should we care about that? And then thirdly, we want to, this, as it says, create a sense of movement to more complex understanding of the subject. And that's where you can maybe do a projection. And it's so what you said, well, you know, if we don't do it, blah, 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 these things happen. And then finally, your conclusion, bring back your argument. And then the last thing you want in this is your works cited page. And we do this to document your research sources. It adds credibility to your paper, and you're avoiding plagiarism. So 6 sources. I like the idea of using that Mybibcom. We also have some handouts, which I think we've covered in a prior class on the in the files. I can show you those, I suppose, if you want to see them, about creating a works cited page. And how to do it and models to look at. Once you've done this a number of times, it's almost a habit. It's really pretty easy to do it. It's not hard at all. The reason I show you mybib.com is because most people, this is not a big thing in their lives. They're doing it for a course. If you're an academic person, if this is something where you're going to be a teacher or a researcher or something like that, then you're going to do it plenty of times and you'll remember it. So using those things, I think, is just the way to go with that. Pair examples, I wanted to look at those for a minute. So these are some old papers. Some of these are good, some of these are not so good. But you can see what people did in the past. This one is 7 pages. And if you read through it, you can see he's got a pretty good introduction. He's interested in super plants, that one, and then he's also interested in this other one. They had on YouTube, they had a program to donate money to start it up. So he's interested in those 2 things. So either modified plants or just taking money for the plants we have and planting more trees. So that's his idea. And this is his position. If we don't stop cutting down trees to build houses, all that, between now and next year, it might be too late. And he's probably right. Okay, this is the name of the person that wrote this article. This is the article title. And then he has a word like asserts. So he has a strong word in there. Argues or something like that. It could be explains if that's what they're doing. And so here's this topic sentence, and he sort of gives us a brief understanding what it is. How does he support his claim? He explains all that. The purpose of the article, what he's doing, like that. What he's hoping to achieve. And so that. This looks a little bit like a précis because it has things like purpose. It's not asking for tone, but in his case, he does purpose. He does the claim. He does something about research. And so he's creating a summary. Here's the second article. He explains he does the same thing with that. And then he's talking about this being a tough sale because of the cost. See how expensive they are to do it. He isn't bringing any information in there yet. He's not bringing any information in here either. So it looks like, probably like here, for instance, he's got I think he does have information in there. I think what he didn't do was he doesn't have in-text citations. That's a bad thing. His paper's pretty good though. I'm not sure if this is the final draft or if it's a rough draft. Yeah, no, this is a rough draft because his works cited isn't right yet. I mean, yeah, you see he's just sort of got parts of it in there. But notice this is research is used, so I probably told him, listen, where are you putting that research? You didn't put an in-text citation, so you're going to have to put this turn time, parentheses, besides that stuff we've been working with, or this other person map, or this one letters. So yeah, so this is a rough draft, so I think it's close to a finished draft, but what he's missing is in-text citations, and his works cited page needs to be fixed. So that's kind of where he is. This one. So these are all pretty close to their final stages, if not their final stage. So this is probably the draft you would put in on 512 or by 512. This one, she's actually got her in-text citation. So she's got a really interesting hook to start out with. Wow. State of California is facing the most frightening period in its history. 99.84% of the land is suffering from drought. Wow, I didn't know that myself. That's pretty scary. Yeah, that tells you where we are. So we don't feel it, we don't see it. We just got some rain, and we're feeling like, oh, this is pretty nice. But realistically, when summer starts, when it gets really dry and the forests are burning again, we'll get scared again. So that's a problem with humans. We just see what we see outside. We don't understand that we're in the middle of a process. It's not something we can actually control. So here's her 2 articles that she's looking at. And here's her argument statement. In order to mitigate climate change, it's necessary to begin by cutting red meat production consumption. And the other one she's looking at is this other one, which is something about water, I think. Yeah, she's utilizing water in reservoirs. So she's decided to come down on the one that's the red meat. So she's going to talk about both of them, but the one she's really going to be arguing is the one we need to do first, is the red meat. So here's the first one about red meat. This is the other one about, I don't know what that's about. Oh, what she's doing. She presented her summary paragraph, and she presented some evidence. So she's kind of throwing that in there already. Here's a summary paragraph on this one, and then she's presenting some evidence about it. And then she's got lots of evidence. So she goes through this, and she's loaded here. And here's her works cited, which looks pretty good, except she's gone backwards. So she just needs to pull that line over there and push this one in. Okay. But you can see these are all pretty standard. Author's last name, article title, either website or publisher, year it's published, URL access. If you go through it, it's that same thing over and over and over again, unless it's a database, and then it changes. So, okay, so you can look through these. I mean, they give you examples that way. Punctuating is something that you might want to be thinking about as you're going through there. I mean, I'm going to help you with that when I'm looking at your page. But some stuff, we'll just look at the examples for a minute. When you punctuate, when you put an citation, you're not going to, if you have a printed source, you're not going to put the word P or page or a comma. You'll just have the last name and the page number. Otherwise, you probably just have the last person's name. And that works cited page we created, if you remember right, there was no name in there. So if there's no name, you put the article title inside. Now, in terms of punctuating, they have 2 periods here. You can't have 2 periods in this first one. So we would take the period away after think, and then we just keep 1 period. And what we know is that when you're putting your source, you move your period. So then the source goes inside your sentence like that. So this one moved the period. That part was good, but they left a comma in there, so that's not good. So this is sort of minor things to know how to do. And reminder, paraphrasing, make sure that you cite that, make sure that you do it. If you don't do it, it's considered plagiarism. And again, that means you put it in your own words. Here's a quote, it's exact quote. So it's all those word for word. There's the person that wrote it, the page number, the period is on the outside. This is a legitimate paraphrase. This is where you took this and you put it in your own words. Now notice they only took 2 words out of that whole thing. Everything else is their words. They still gave credit down here because they had the author name there, so they just needed the page. Plagiarized, if you look at it, and you can go up here and it says the professional hockey player starts a little bit better than his peers. Plagiarized, the guy with no quotes put the professional hockey player starts out a little bit better than his peers. So they're copying it exactly, almost. This one they changed the words around. Here it is, and that little difference leads to an opportunity that makes a difference. They just switched it, and that leads to an opportunity that makes that difference a bit bigger. So they just changed a little bit. They just took this piece out, left, I mean, it's almost the same words. It's plagiarized. So I can see it's plagiarized, but there's also a database I submit these things to that tells me it's plagiarized. So all of that, so I can find things. Questions, guys? What's your questions? So we looked at the Mybibcom, which I think is really good for making citations. We talked about the punctuation a little bit with your in-text citations. And then we looked at the outline. And so this is a pretty long paper. It should probably be about a good five pages anyway. Those papers were pretty long. They were extra long. But for sure 5 pages. And if you think about it, it's just research. This isn't anything you have to create. It's not like the rhetorical analysis with the dehumanization one. It's basically just get the work done. Find the 2 articles, summarize what they said, decide which one you think is better, find some research that supports, those ideas, those 2 articles you chose, those topics. See which one seems to be better. Make a counter argument where you say, yeah, I know I talked about these 2 things, but you know what? I have to admit this other one is probably not a bad idea. That when you do that, you're conceding. And then, but you want to come back to your idea. However, the first step or the most important step or something like that would be to do this other thing with, say, I don't know, red meat or something like that, like she did. Okay, so mostly it's just your work. You just do your work. You just get stuff done.
Mr. Osborne.
Yes.
So you're saying that of the 2 articles, we need to pick we need to decide on which one is works better on mitigating climate change. But can we agree? Can we agree on both?
Yes. So you could. That's what I was saying. You could decide that we'll do one first because it's easy. I can do this and get it done in about 6 months. I'll have a quick impact. The other one's going to take a while. Or one costs more money, but boy, it's really good. So you could still argue, even though it costs more money, that this is the one we should put most of our energy into. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the other one, especially if it doesn't cost any money, or there are different people working on it. So maybe it's not all the same people. I mean, we're a very large country. We don't have to just do one thing. And we have enough money to do more than one thing. So maybe what we really need to do is set up a plan. So maybe what you would be doing is arguing that whatever plan they develop, or the country develops, the government develops for mitigating climate change, must include, say, the one, and should include the other, or should include both, or must include both, something like that. Or you argue that this one has a just.
Mr. Osborne, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. No.
We still can hear you. That's weird because it seems like he didn't mute himself.
Mm-hmm. No.
I think he's saying goodbye. Like the class is over already. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Take care. Bye, Jessie.
Bye-bye. Bye, Citlali.
Los árboles. So, si lo ocupas de un día para otro nomás. Porque yo mañana lo voy a usar. ¿Sí? Bien.